And so what it is airlines pay me for my cows grazing for carbon credits because they're actually reducing the carbon that the jets are putting off.
How is that? So today I have the great pleasure of welcoming Casey Parker from Hufeisian Ranch in Utah.
Hufeisian Ranch.
Hufeisian. Yeah, I already got it wrong.
Yep, and we are in Wyoming.
I'm going to start that over.
That's okay. Yeah.
Today I have the great pleasure of welcoming Casey Parker from Hufeisian Ranch in Wyoming.
Yep.
And so, hi, Casey. How are you?
Good. How are you, Dr. Rick?
I'm doing just great. I actually have you're the very first one of the impending series of Meet the Ranchers on my channel. I'm a little embarrassed that I didn't start with someone in Iowa, as that's where I live, but it doesn't matter. YouTube goes beyond all the state lines, and I do have some ranchers in Iowa that I'm certainly going to get on here. But one of the reasons I wanted to get you on here is because, honestly, I've eaten a lot of steak in my life well before I started the carnivore diet, and I really think that the ribeye, the Wagyu ribeye I got from you guys a few months ago might have been, it's certainly in the top 5, might have been the best ribeye I ever had.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So yeah, so I'm real excited to talk to you and hear your story. So let's start with the name. Tell us about the name of the ranch.
So Hufeisen is German for horseshoe, the horseshoe ranch. So I have a lot of German lineage in my family. So that's kind of where that came from. And the ranch, we're on Horse Creek, and then we have a creek that runs through the ranch that looks like a horseshoe. And I didn't want to just name it the Horseshoe Ranch because that's just boring. So that's where we came out with the Hufeisen Ranch. And it's actually a children's book in Germany as well. So
the Hufeisen Ranch is the name of a children. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I would assume you're German?
Yeah. Well, descendant.
Right. German. Of course. So tell us the story. How did Casey Parker end up to be sitting on a ranch in the middle of Wyoming?
Oh boy. Well, I grew up on a farm in Illinois. So grew up farming, all of that. Spent my summers in Ireland with my aunt and uncle that were dairy farmers. So I got to learn a lot about the cattle there. Our farm, we had hogs and we had horses and goats and things like that. But I had to spend a lot of time with the cattle over in Ireland. When I got older, I had some business. I had some power sports businesses. And then when COVID hit, that kind of went crazy. And I was like,
Tell me about that. You had power sports businesses?
Yeah. So we sold ATVs and UTVs and dirt bikes and things like that. We had several different dealerships in different states and things. But I was like, I am tired of this. I just want to go back to agriculture. Like, that's the one thing I've always loved. It's always been part of my life. So I have family here in Wyoming, and I gave them a call and I said, hey, find me a ranch. I'm coming to Wyoming. And so they did, and we've been here since. So
who is we?
Myself, my husband, and our 3 children.
How old are the kids?
So the oldest, she's 20 now, and then we have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old.
And they're the 20-year-old. What's she gonna do?
She helps on the ranch right now. She is in school. She wants to be a vet.
Oh, that's great. Right in the alley, right?
Yes, yeah. Okay. I keep telling her, I was like, that's so much schooling. I was like, I hope you have the patience for it. So she's working on it, and she's not overdoing it. So she's kind of taking it a little slower than going all out, so she doesn't wear herself out. I think so. That'll be good.
Outstanding. So So tell me, so your husband, what's his background?
He's with, he was in the power sports too. He's just more on mechanic side, software, computer engineering. He did a lot of that. But he does all ranching now, and he's out there every day. The good thing is he can fix a tractor when it breaks down, because it happens a lot, especially in
Sure.
the cold here. Well, you're in Iowa. It's just as cold. And
Yep.
yeah, this time of year everything's breaking just nonstop, or it won't start, or there's always something for me.
So where, you don't have to say exactly, but I guess it's public on your webpage. Where exactly is the ranch in Wyoming?
So we're northeast Wyoming, so we're about 40 minutes north of Gillette, Wyoming. So,
Okay. Okay. And when you first, where were you before?
um, right before that, we lived in right outside of Memphis, Tennessee. So we had a little farm outside of Memphis, Tennessee, and yep, we ended up moving here. I mean, it was nowhere near as big as this place by any means, but yeah, that's where we were.
A little colder in Wyoming.
It's a lot colder in Wyoming.
And
Uh,
so what did your husband think? I mean, whose idea? How did it come about? Was that you and said, "Listen, we're just going to go ranch," and your husband said, "Okay," or did you guys talk about it?
yeah, it was me, and we definitely made a joint decision on it, but yeah, more of
But
my push, I
you were the
guess.
impetus.
Yeah, of course.
So how big's the ranch?
So our ranch is 1,400 acres, and then we
Wow.
have a new ranch that we just started where we keep our bulls. It's much, much smaller, but it's a nice little kind of getaway, you know. And it's 70 acres. So, but it's nice just to keep the bulls, and that way we don't have to worry about pasturing them. It has heated water troughs out there, like that are set in the ground. So it's a huge issue with water out here in the winter, and you have to be somewhere close to electricity, or there's just no water. So trying to keep them away from the girls and get everybody their water, it's nice to have that extra property out there just to keep them out there during this cold spot of the year.
Sure, sure. So, obviously, I've had tremendous health benefits from the carnivore diet, but I have a
Yeah.
soft spot for ranchers. My stepmother, who has passed on, she grew up on, and at the time in the 1950s, when she was young and growing up, she was on the largest cattle ranch in Montana. And
Wow.
yeah, it was outside of Gold Creek, which is way outside of Missoula.
Hmm.
And one of the highlights of my childhood was when she took my brother and I, and I was living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so it was a bit of a city slicker. And she took us out there, and we moved the cattle from the summer to the winter pasture, and moved a couple hundred head, just the three of us. And it was really just
So
crazy
much
cool.
fun. So
Yeah,
much fun. It really is. Yeah.
yeah. I very very fond memories. It's a lifestyle that I think it kind of was dying, but seems to kind of be coming back.
Yeah, I really think it's coming back a lot, since people are really waking up about the food industry and things like that. Everybody's they just want to live a healthier lifestyle, and they don't want to eat the things that are in the grocery stores now that they're seeing what has been happening for so long now. And so I think it's really starting to come back for sure.
Yeah, I think so, and I would bet your family eats healthy.
They do. They do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
So oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Tell me about the so would you consider your ranch a regenerative ranch? Is that the
Yes.
term you would use? Tell us about your process. Tell us how that goes.
So we have the cattle, and then we have sheep, and then we have the pigs, and then we're also starting right now the chicken tractor, to try to regenerate the soil. So we do a rotational grazing on there, and then we also plant cover crops and things like that. This year we got completely wiped out with that. It was just the driest summer ever. We had the wildfires out here. It was just, this summer was a nightmare. Um, but we'll start again in the spring with the regenerative pastures. We planted and everything, but nothing came up. It was that bad this year. But the more that we keep regenerating the soil, I think the more the moisture is going to get into that soil and help on these dry spouts that we have. And hopefully, we'll start seeing some of that drought go away soon. So I hope.
So you don't have irrigation, you're just waiting on rain, old school?
Yeah. So there is irrigation dikes out here that were put in by the Army Corps of Engineers, I believe in the 1930s. And so it's a flood irrigation where we can pull it out of the creek that goes around the ranch. But the thing is that except for in like the early to mid spring, there's just not enough water in there to pull out just because it's been so dry. I think on a normal year, because the first year we were here, it flooded over and everything was great. But I think on a normal year, we'll be able to use that. So looking forward to using that and hopefully we will get to maybe this coming year. I'm hoping.
It sounds, your process sounds like you're almost kind of modeling on Polyface Farms out there with Joel Salatin.
Yeah, very similar to that. And it's a great way of doing things, let nature do it. I even, I keep bees here and everything like that as well. So yeah, for our garden and yeah.
Sure. That's great. And now obviously they're grass fed and then, but there was something about, I want to say
The
some kind of was it sunflower seeds?
Sunflower seeds. Yep. So we started adding sunflower seeds into the mixture with their mineral supplementation, and it adds the fat in there. It's a completely non-GMO plant, just originally non-GMO. Like there is no GMO of sunflower, so that's great. And it just helps put that little bit of extra fat on them because it's really hard to get that nice marbling and a wagyu on straight grass, and it takes around an additional year to when they're like almost 4 years old to get the mature marbling on them on just a straight grass-fed diet. So we added the sunflower seed with their mineral, and it seems to be helping. So.
Okay. And now, so this is year 2 or 3 then, or 4?
4.
Okay, this is your 4th season coming up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And how many head do you have?
Right now we have 150. Yeah.
Okay.
About 150.
And so do you're obviously breeding your own then, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. We started off with, bred ones, and then we had some, ones to feed out and things like that. And was what we started with. And then we started with embryos. So we had embryos made down in Texas, and then we put them into our cattle. We've actually put them into Angus cattle. So they had full-blood Wagyu babies out of these big Angus cattle here. And they were really neat. Yeah. And then, so now they're having their own babies now, which is really cool to see. So yeah, we're finally at the point where we have actually bred out our own lines, and we'll be seeing our own lines start turning into our beef here soon, which will be great. Instead of us taking other people's lines that they've made and then, feeding them and taking care of them until they're ready for slaughter. Now they will actually be our bloodlines that we created. So that's going to be awesome.
So 150 head, what's your goal?
Right now I'm pretty okay with where we're at. We would need a lot more acreage out here to handle any more. Because in Wyoming, it is 30 acres per head of cattle.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Versus anywhere else, it's like one cow per acre or 3 cows per acre in some areas like Tennessee. Here, 33 acres per cow or per pair. So
Are there other ranchers in the same sort of area that have been doing it longer that are able to get a higher yield per acre after doing what you're doing with the soil?
there are some people on the other side of the state that I work with the Wyoming Food Coalition, and they're doing some regenerative pasture things, and they have seen some improvement. Um, it's about I can't remember what the NRCS told me that it added. I want to say you could get 1.5 cows.
That's a
After
big difference.
it is a big difference, but it would be over a period of time.
Sure.
Yeah, we're not at that point yet. I would say anywhere from the 5 to 10 year span was where you were going to be able to add that extra bit onto there. So
There you go. And
it takes time.
tell us about your pork.
So the Mangalitsa pork, they are like a wild boar, technically. So they're a Hungarian breed. They were almost extinct in the 90s, and then some farmers came in and brought them back. So, but they're a very foraging type of breed. We don't feed corn. We do not feed soy. We do not any with this breed, and they mostly just forage like a wild hog. And they're just nice as can be. They've got curly. They look like sheep pigs. They've got curly hair on them, and so they're a lard pig, so they have an extra amount of fat on them, but they're also considered the Wagyu of pork, and they've got nice fine marbling within the meat. It's really pretty. Absolutely delicious. We're processing again on the 14th of this month. We processed about 6 weeks ago, and some of them went to a chef out in Colorado, and he was like, "This is the finest piece of meat I've ever put in my mouth."
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna have to get some of that for sure.
Yeah, I was just like, "Oh, that was just the sweetest." Like, cause he messaged me on Christmas to let me know that, and I was like, "That's just the sweetest," Thank you. And he's like, "No, it was amazing." So, and
Well, I would say so. I bought your package last time you were doing a freezer clear out,
yeah,
and it was the first time I had ever had a sirloin tip roast. I didn't even know about a sirloin tip roast,
mhm.
and I just threw it in. I have a oven that you just press roast and how you want it. Put a little Lowry seasoned salt on the outside of it. That's it. Threw it in the roaster. And I just couldn't believe how good it was. I mean, and now I'm eating more sirloin tip roast.
With those sirloin tip roasts, you can cut them into sirloin tip steaks, because we have the sirloin tip steaks too. But you can get a whole roast and cut it into steaks and eat it for multiple days, and it's really good. Or kebab meat. The chuck roasts, we cut those into chuck steaks too, and I'll tell you what, they're just like eating just an awesome ribeye. They're just amazing when you do.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
Yeah,
you would be super surprised. Like, the chuck steak is probably one of my favorite steaks.
really.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure it's fantastic. I'm definitely going to get some more, and I will order some pork this month. So I had a little bit of my carniversary. 1 year carniversary was January 3rd, and between Thanksgiving and Christmas this year, there was a little wobble, a few wobbles,
Yeah.
culminating in a New Year's Eve. I went to this little grocery store in our neighborhood and got a Cubano sandwich, and it was fantastic. But it was like, okay, that's it. So
It was good.
oh, it was fantastic. I hadn't had a piece of bread in a year, and so I am doing the lion diet, which is only ruminant meat. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I'm doing
Yep.
just lion diet for January. So far, I feel great. I don't know how long I'm going to do it, but I'm certainly going to swing back carnivore and eventually probably cycle through carnivore and keto and all that. But I'll be definitely getting plenty of your meat in the future. So now, right now, because this is going to come out probably a few days from when we're recording it, you are still having a freezer clear out, right?
Yes, I'm gonna have it until the end of this month,
Okay.
or until I run out. So
Right, and that is just stuff that's kind of been there where it's a little bit more time pressure to get it
get
sold.
everything out, yeah, because I'm processing more cattle. So I'm also taking reservations for quarters, halves, and whole Angus beef or Wagyu beef. Um, and we're processing those on the 20th, but the beef hangs for 2 to 3 weeks, and then I got cutting and packaging and all of that. So I'm trying to make room so I can bring all that stuff in. I'm completely sold out of primals right now from Christmas, but I'm always left with roasts and ground and those things. So it's just, let's move it out so we can get more primals in, because of course everybody wants ribeyes. Everybody wants ribeyes and New York strips, but can you blame them?
No.
Yeah.
Nope, I love them myself, and I just once I've started into this lifestyle, I mean, I basically just eat, especially now, just red meat and salt. On the weekends, I'm a little cheese heavy. Typically, that's why I'm trying to recover here in January. But it's I feel great doing it. So does the family, obviously you said you have a garden, so you're eating vegetables and stuff too. You're not carnivore or keto.
I do eat vegetables. I do carnivore, so but I also add, most of the vegetables that I eat are considered fruit vegetables. Like, I don't really eat anything outside of that. My one special thing that I'll have every once in a while is a potato. So there's that. But mostly I eat mostly meat. But I like to have like peas or green beans, things like that. More that are more fruit than a vegetable.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, mine, I don't have a super strict. I know there's some people. Dr. Chafee says plants are trying to kill you. Dr. Kilt doesn't eat any plants at all. But I'm a little bit more like, hey, the lifestyle has to be sustainable as well, right?
Exactly. That is the way that I feel about it too. It's like I would not be able to sustain just eating meat by itself. I just couldn't do that. And I love tomatoes. I just love tomatoes. So that is probably my number one vegetable that I'll eat. I love avocados. So those are, I'll eat those on the carnivore too. But I don't eat a lot of them. It's just a side to break up, give you a little crunchiness. Because
Yep.
sometimes you need that just to help sustain. And then every once in a while, I really like rice. So that's kind of like my once a month, splurge is I will have some rice.
Yeah, well, I think probably like I said, once I get to where my health is completely restored, I'm probably going to cycle through keto and carnivore and that kind of stuff. But it's my kids. Nobody in my house is on board with it as far as them doing it, but they can't help but just see what it's doing for me. So I'm kind of downloading knowledge into my kids. Like, okay, guess what? You have dad's genetics at least halfway, and that means you, like most people in America, and the reason I say that is because I think it's if most people in America are having trouble with obesity and diabetes, then most people in America don't do well with the standard American diet. The standard American does poorly on the standard American diet. So we got to give the kids, the keys to the kingdom of health, and that's kind of what I look at anyway.
I'm really excited to see what RFK is going to do with all of this. I'm really excited to see what he does, because he's really behind, the tallow for the food, and he really wants to, I guess, research and put in all these things that are in our diets that are not in other diets, like in Europe and everywhere else, that everybody here is just so sick. I'm excited to see how that comes along. I think it's going to be fantastic, I think.
Well, I am too. We'll hope he gets confirmed, because they're bringing out. I mean, he is going he has drawn his sword and is marching towards the beast, and all you ever see is really ad hominem attacks against some of his most controversial positions. And and he's done some wacky stuff. I guess he ran over a bear and then drove it into Central Park, and he's done some wacky stuff. But hey, whatever. We're
Yeah.
gonna judge all the politicians on the wacky stuff they've done. But
Right.
I just am so grateful that there is now. It's like it's in the zeitgeist. There's now a major politician who's going to probably have some power, saying, "Hey, man, this food system is broken,
Is
and we
completely
need to fix it."
yes. And that's the biggest thing. Well, the one thing I love about the Wagyu beef also is like on the carnivore diet and being a woman, like and having hormonal issues and things like that. I had a hysterectomy, and I feel like if I would have found the carnivore diet sooner, I might not have had to have that happen. Because I've heard, people that it's changed for them. But with the Wagyu, if you're on the 80% fat, 20% protein, it helps your hormone balance. And yeah, and the Wagyu with the extra fat, with the marbling in there, that omega-3 fat that's in there, that helps so much with the fat ratio than just eating just regular straight lean beef. And it helps me stay on that fat ratio. The pork does too, but yeah.
And don't the sunflower seeds actually add to the omega-3
Yes, it
ratio?
does. Yep. It sure does. Yep. The grass fed does, the and the sunflower. They both do. And then it's
So
just genetically within the marbling as well. It's not just regular fat. It even has a completely different melting point. So it it melts like it's just like a little bit faster than or a little bit slower than olive oil. So it melts really fast. So
you think you're gonna have plans to start selling your tallow?
So I do sell the tallow. I'm backed up on it right now. I have a bunch of pre-orders. I just finished them and shipping them tomorrow. And then after this next processing date, um, I'm trying to find somebody that can render it for me because it takes a lot of time. I even have one of the big kettles, like steam kettles that I render the tallow in for sale and everything, but it is very time consuming. So I'm hoping that one of the processors, hopefully, yeah, will be able to do it for me. We used to use a processor out in Cody, but it's a 16-hour trip back and forth. And yeah, and I loved them the way that they cut the meat, and just everything. They're my favorite, but it's just so far. This processing date, we're using Sturgis, South Dakota. We're using that processor. We have not used them before, so hoping everything goes good. I do know other ranchers that do use them, and their product looks great. So I have faith in them. But I'm hoping they have a way to render the tallow like Cody did because it's really hard for me to keep up. I will say though that I did. I was gonna do an Instagram, just little video on it. A cut like over the holidays. We had gone to go see my family in Illinois, our family, and I forgot my soap, and I make my own soap out of the tallow. And so I forgot it. So I went to Walmart and I bought the Cetaphil face soap, and it destroyed my face. Like I broke out all over my face. I mean, just destroyed it. It was so bad. And just 3 days ago, I guess it's been about 3 days, I started using my tallow face soap again, and it's like almost all gone. Like almost
So
overnight. Just
so do you sell the tallow face soap?
I do. Hmm.
Oh, okay.
And
So
well, yeah, I do sell some of that as well. I make that, and I'm actually trying to find a way to make a lot more of it a lot easier. But I do sell that as well, and especially like at our farmers markets and things like that here, I sell a lot of it.
well, if I could ask a favor, I'd like to get some of that.
Absolutely.
I don't. Um, I'm unhappy with the methodology that my daughter is using to control her acne. I would love it if we could try that. And
Yeah,
I've
you just
not
use
tried
that.
that with her.
That's it, and it works great. Like I don't use moisturizers or anything like that, but tallow is the closest oil to human skin oils that there is. So I don't use any extra moisturizers or anything, and I don't have any issues with it. Just wash my face with it soap, and that's it. And then like my face just completely clear.
That's great.
Yeah,
And that's
love it.
well, so kind of swinging back to the female aspect, the female health aspect of this whole thing. So last October, I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Kiltz, and I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Kiltz,
Mm-mm.
but he's a doctor on YouTube, and he is a carnivore and been a carnivore for I believe 20 years.
Wow.
He's a fertility specialist.
Okay.
And he's just a superstar. He's like 70, pilots his own jet between his
Oh wow.
fertility clinics in different states.
Grief.
So the first thing he does with his patients is he puts them on the carnivore diet. And he
Yeah.
said a certain percentage of his infertile patients will become fertile by eating carnivore. And part of that is going to be the hormonal regulation, like you talked about. Part of that's going to be just getting the junk out. But it's just amazing. As I'm kind of a carnivore newbie. I started my channel last year when I started my diet, and I did it in a big part just to keep myself accountable. Like now I have 3,000 subscribers, which is nothing, but there's a bunch of people out there that are kind of watching to see if I get fat again. And so, and it just really blew open the entire world for me. And now, from my medical perspective, I've changed my practice and how I approach my patients and metabolically and everything. But I've really started to dig into the research. And you have these kids who are going to eat crap food, and then they're going to take hormones like spironolactone
Yeah.
in order to get rid of acne, and they're going to use antibiotics, long-term antibiotics and hormones to get rid of acne that is there because their diet is poor. And so this whole, I mean, and just think of all, just what, follow the money in all that, and follow the health disasters that are currently here and the ones that are going to happen if we don't change. And that's why I want to help the ranchers, because you are on the front lines. I mean, there's a few doctors, that are out there, and that is growing too. But the ranchers are, I mean, you're the ones that give us the medicine, frankly, and so that's why I want to basically I want to do these interviews, let people see who you are and hear about your great meats and your processes and what you're doing. And I hope they attach to you. I hope that, I hope in a year or two my channel continues to grow and we can talk a few more times. Gosh, one day I'd love to come out and visit the ranch and do a little mini doc out there.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
time, how time goes.
Yeah.
But just to be able to hear your story and see what you're doing, it really breathes life into me, because I know, I mean, there is, I don't want to go so far as to say a good and evil in this, but there are aspects of what's happening on the food, in the food system, that are evil.
Yes. And big
And
pharma.
oh, and what's that? Sorry.
And big pharma.
Well, that's all tied together, right? Yeah. So, and if you actually look at the who owns what, you'll
Yeah.
find that BlackRock and Vanguard own Nabisco and Johnson and Johnson, right? I don't know if that's exactly true, but something like that is true.
Yeah.
But I think it's so great that people like you are called back to the land, and and I get nuts when these people talk about how cattle are not good for the environment. And
Oh, it's so ridiculous too. And and I'm part of I'm part of Agoro, so it's it's a carbon neutral program. And so what it is airlines pay me for my cows grazing for carbon credits because they're actually reducing the carbon that the jets are putting off.
how is that?
And how are you it's just like
No. What I mean is, tell me the process. I mean, what I mean is, so I believe that cows, when they poop, they're enriching the soil.
mhm.
You have more beneficial nematodes, more of the fungi. You know, you're going to have healthier grasses. That's going to capture more carbon. And I don't even want to get into whether I, the whole carbon's a whole different argument.
That's
To
what
be
it
honest,
is. It's yeah,
to be
they
honest with you.
it captures the carbon, and they pay us out to seed and then keep the cattle on a rotational grazing to make the soil healthier to capture the carbon from the jets, but it's the cattle that are doing it. It's
By the pooping.
yeah, and the grazing by the
And
grazing and yeah,
How does
keeping the pooping and the grazing and
how does the grazing reduce
just
carbon?
um it helps well with the grazing. It just helps regenerate because they're stepping on it, eating it
Ah,
down, and then they're also it puts those nutrients into the soil, or helps put the poop into the soil and the pee and all of that. And then also they're real big on bale grazing. So you put a lot of the hay bales out in a row and then the cows eat them down, but that it creates a fungus underneath of the soil, and you'll see the next year just how much better the the grass has grown just in that area. Yeah,
really?
they're really big onto the bale grazing, which um, that's what we're doing here right now this winter. So because
That's great. That's neat. So I guess what I'm puzzled about in this is that, so the people who the people who are catastrophizing global warming as if, that are, let's just leave it at, they're catastrophizing it. They posit that the cows would burp and that methane gas, and I understand what happens is they calculate that in isolation, right?
mhm.
And they say, okay, so the cow produces this much methane. They don't care about the grazing. They don't care about, what it's doing to the soil. But how is it that I'm just gonna have to research agora? Is it agora?
Agoro. It's
Agoro.
Agoro. It's Agoro. Yeah,
Agoro. I'm gonna
and
have to
there's
really
just
research
one
that.
of many companies that do it, but they were the best ones for
Because
just
you
for
hear
their
because
policies and
because
things.
you hear these people saying that cattle are bad for the environment, and it's interesting that now here we hear you telling me that the airlines are paying you because your cattle are grazing because they're good for the environment. It's just crazy,
Yeah,
right?
it's silly. It's all silly. It's just I think it's just a lot of noise that people are trying to make. That's
Yeah.
what it
and
is.
and and I support regenerative and non-regenerative ranchers. I think, we need food, we need meat, but I do have a special place in my heart. I hope that we can have more regenerative ranchers, because you don't have to do a lot of studying. I've been following Joe Salatin for 20 years,
Yeah.
just kind of seeing what he was doing. And I lived out in Kauai for a while, and I really got into regenerative agriculture out there. I actually set up a couple of aquaponics farms
Okay.
and things like that. And that was like sort of the first iteration of this for me. But I do think that the more regenerative we have, the better it's going to be. The one down in Georgia, White Oak Pastures. He's got that real striking video, if you haven't seen it, of
I
there's
think I think I've
a
seen
chemical
his.
yeah. So
Mhm.
there's a chemical agriculture runoff, and then there's his farm runoff, and you can just see the water
Oh,
on
total difference.
the one side is brown, the water on the other side is clear, and it's like,
Well, that's the thing with regenerative agriculture. Is so you don't have to use chemicals and you don't have to use fertilizers and pesticides and all these things. You're naturally doing it. So that's the that's the best part of it. It keeps you from having to use any chemicals, which I don't use on anything. We do not use chemicals at all whatsoever out here. The
really,
only thing that we use at all is ivermectin for worming.
sure.
And that's it. And diatomaceous earth and garlic salt mixture for warming, and apple cider vinegar. But outside of that, nothing.
And it's when people, they're going to go on your website. I hope I'm going to run, I'm going to make it real easy for them to find it from this episode, and they're going to see your steak and they're going to say, "Oh man, that's expensive." But you got to understand that what you're paying for is what you've just said: diatomaceous earth and vinegar and a little ivermectin
Chemicals.
uh,
And
instead
like
of all the chemicals.
well, with the Angus that we're getting ready to process, well, I'll have that up there again soon. And Angus is less expensive than Wagyu, but Wagyu, you do have to raise them out till they're almost 4 years old. So double that of an Angus cow. So you've got 2 extra years of raising out a beef for it to be ready. So that's
Oh,
the real reason that the prices are like that around Wagyu. It's just because of how long you have to raise them out and feed
that
them.
makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's double. So it's just double the time. And
Yeah.
then also, there's no importation of full-blooded Wagyu since, the 90s. And it's very, very expensive to, breed very high-end full-blood Wagyu because we're very limited, on what we have being brought in from like the 60s and 70s and 80s.
So tell me again. So you bought Wagyu embryos,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and you used your cattle as incubators.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And where did you get the Wagyu embryos?
From Texas. So Bubba K, he's still around, and he actually still ranches, and he's in his 80s, maybe 90s. I think he's in his 80s. But he was the first guy to bring the Wagyu over from Japan, and he still has like some of the semen that we have for our embryos is 60 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's very deteriorated. And we bought the last couple straws that he had from him, and we made some embryos out of those. And then the other two, they're also, the same age. Actually, Shiggy, that bull never even left Japan. But then the other two, they did. They were one of the first ones that had come over, and we have their semen as well. And then, they have also other, great dams that we use their eggs to make the embryos. And then we put them into our Angus cattle. And then we've also bought some really nice, well-bred cows out of Iowa. There's a Wagyu ranch in Iowa, actually. And they were some of our first girls out here. Some out of Washington. And mostly out of Texas. There's more Wagyu breeders in Texas than I think anywhere, I think there's more cows in Texas than anywhere. But,
Sure. Right.
So it kind of makes sense. But we got ours from the first guy that ever brought the Wagyu over and the first cows. So we're starting with foundation lines and then bringing in some of the better stuff that people have produced throughout the years since then. So
then go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So then what percentage of your herd is going to end up being Wagyu in the end? What do you think?
Probably 100% in the very end. Yeah.
In the very end. And what is it now?
Right now we have, out of 156, we've got 26 Angus.
Okay. Yeah. You mean Wagyu? Oh, no. 26 Angus, and the rest are Wagyu.
And the rest are Wagyu.
Oh, okay. And so, just I'm going to really show my ignorance here because I love Wagyu beef and I know it's from Japan. That's all I know. What tell us the background on Wagyu beef.
So, the Wagyu cattle are from Japan. They were an actual working cow. So they used them to pull carts and all that stuff and or whatever. And they found out that they had really great meat and when they were butchering them. And they eventually, in the 90s, they stopped all exportation from Japan because they made it a prized meat. But there had already been Wagyu cattle that have already been exported into the United States. And that's how we still have those cattle. And then in Japan, like they don't have places like to graze and things like that. They're in a like 10 by 10 horse stall, and they get fed out nonstop every day, 3 times a day in this stall, and they never leave it. So their muscles get kind of messed up and all kinds of stuff like that because they don't have anywhere to walk. They can't walk or anything like that. So that's where you hear them massaging the cow. It's because their muscles get messed up because they don't get to use them. Now with ours, they have plenty of room to run around, and yeah, but it's the same exact cattle, and the grading, the A5 is only 1% of the cattle in Japan, and it's the A one, 2, 3, 4, 5 is only the Japanese grading scale. So we don't have that over here, obviously. Like we could guess, I guess, and be like, yeah, it looks like an A5 or it looks like an A3. I would say most of our stuff is around an A3. We have had stuff that's turned out like really close to A5, A4, A5. But it's a 1% chance, to get
And
a
that's
cow
that's
that
the
has that.
marbling.
Yeah, that it has an A5 marbling.
Oh, that's okay. So that's the marbling.
Yeah, but most ones like A3, which is my favorite anyway. I don't really care for A5 Wagyu, in my opinion. I think it's a little too rich, and I like to eat a steak. I'm American. I like to eat some beef. You know what I mean? And
Right.
not just a couple slithers, but the A3 is like, oh, just amazing. That's like right in the middle, and yeah, like a really really nice, like extra prime steak. It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I mean, like I said, I honestly, it's in the top couple three, if not the very best ribeye I had. And all I did was put it on the griddle, not
Hmm.
even the grill. I just put it on the griddle and put some salt on it. That's all I did.
Yeah,
And
that
it was
marbling just
just
makes a difference.
oh, yeah,
Yeah, the marbling. Yeah. Well, thank
it's
you. I appreciate that.
it's everything. Yeah, no, you're doing great out there. You're doing great. You're fighting the good fight. I mean, I really believe, like I said, and if you want to get way deep into it, I think there is a spiritual battle going on, and I think that you know,
I
back
agree.
to the land is a way of planting your feet on the right side of that.
I agree.
Frankly, but great.
Definitely.
Well, great. I mean, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to come on,
Yeah, I'm
and
glad
really hope people will see this and buy lots and lots of your meat. I know I'm about to order some more,
thank
and my birthday, I'm gonna treat myself to a cookout with several different people with some of your top Wagyu steaks, and I will continue to buy because I just think it's like I said, it's just unbelievable beef, and what you're doing is great, and I love that we're sitting here talking to each other, and I know who's producing my beef and where, and kind of get a sense of your family and the story, and that's what's so great about this, and that's what's exciting. So that's what I really hope some people will latch on to with this.
Absolutely. And I will send you some soap. I'll
Yep,
send you some.
that would be
I have.
lovely.
I'll send you some. The plain regular soap, and then I have some. I made a green tea one that I really like too. So it's made out of just green tea and
Awesome.
aloe.
Well, so tell people on my channel where they can find you.
So we're at realwagyubeef.com.
That's great that you got that, realwagyubeef.com,
Beef.com. I
right?
know. Yeah, that works.
That seems lucky.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh,
And then we have a YouTube channel, we have Instagram and Facebook. They're all at YO Wagyu. So
well, I'll link to all those in the description and all that. And is there anything else that you would like to say before we finish this up?
if anybody's looking for quarters, halves, or whole beef, we will be processing on the 20th. So get the orders in so you can fill out your own cut sheet and pick whatever cuts that you want off of those cows. And then we are also doing hogs on the 14th. If you want a whole or a half hog, same deal. So, but yeah, thank you for having me on. I really, really appreciate you inviting me onto your channel.
No problem. I hope a lot of people watch it, and I hope, I hope other carnivore people out on YouTube decide to make it their business to get some of these ranchers out in front of the people too, so that they can help you guys out and eat some delicious meat and save the world.
Yes, I agree. Going
All right.
animals is the best.
Well, thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you. You have a good evening.
You too.
Bye, Dr. Rick.
Okay, so yeah, thanks. That was awesome. We got
Yeah.
almost about 45 minutes, so that's a nice clip. And like I said, I really hope that that you get some business. And the internet's forever, so hopefully there will be. Sorry, let me just stay on for just a sec. I want to make sure that we got everything. I'm going to end the recording.